Hello and welcome to the Punter, the show that likes to keep you up to date with all the sports betting action across the sporting calendar. On tonight's show, we'll be delving back into the Olympics and reviewing the 2012 London Games. We'll also be looking forward to all of the football fixtures this midweek with Capital One Cup first round matches, plus England in friendly action against Italy. We've also got time today to look forward to the Blue Square Prem and indeed the cricket and the final test between England and South Africa at Lord's. I'm pleased to say that Alan Alger is with me in the studio. Alan, how are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad, Dan. Yeah,
good. Well. We've got to talk Olympics first of all because the dust is just beginning to settle on the action from London 2012. From a bookmaker's point of view, was it a good one for you?
Yeah, it's been good for us. I think just before the games got underway, we were speculating as to how much punters would actually get involved, and it's been about the level we expected. It's not gone through the roof, and even on that huge Super Saturday where all the British golds came in, a few patriotic punters got their money that day, but it was only about 8th or 9th on our events list when we ran the report a few days later. Way behind the racing on that day from Glorious Goodwood and other places. So it did have a place. It obviously had a place for the people viewing, but in punting terms, it found its level around 6th or 7th on the run.
What about minor sports? Anything unusual that you took money on? Because we always suppose that we're going to take money, or bookmakers are going to take money on things like the 100 metres, and indeed athletes like Mo Farah and one or two other of the Team GB athletes. But what about the more unusual sports, more unusual punts?
Well, I think a lot of people said, again, going into the games, that if you were going to make some money off the bookmakers, do it on the minor sports, because you don't have a kayak expert suddenly lurking around the office that you bring out every 4 years to price it up. So I think any brave souls in the industry that went up first probably had their prices copied, as often happens with some of these obscure events. So if you were an expert in any of those fields and you judged the market the right way, you could have made a few quid. But they weren't coming out the woodwork just to back a winner of the pentathlon. But some people were enhancing their enjoyment from the fantastic BBC coverage by watching it with a bet. Now,
punters like to be counterintuitive, and there's always this big thing about patriotic punts and Team GB athletes, and indeed Team GB as a whole. Bookmakers price them up artificially short because you're going to take bets. I'm never quite sure that always happens, and sometimes we as punters, we look to go the other way. If we did go the other way this time around, we got caught out, because when we look back at what happened with the total Team GB golds, obviously, I think they surpassed expectations, didn't they?
Yeah, they really did. I think they've beaten the original line by 7. Now, we were on the show and Nigel was there, and I think even Chris, who is quite patriotic, we were saying that under 22.5 could be a good bet. Because we were weighing up some of the attitudes of some of the athletes and whether or not they would actually be able to perform. Now, we got some of those right, really, because, if you think about Adlington in the swimming pool, she didn't really perform to the best of her expectations.
Cavendish as well, maybe.
And Cavendish, yeah. So in some ways, we got the attitude right, but then because it was so, because we've obviously invested in this particular games, the golds were coming out of nowhere. I mean, Rutherford for the long jump, I mean, nobody expected that at all, and you wouldn't have had him in for much on that 22.5 line, and then it obviously has risen.
Speaking of that line, let's just remind everyone of how it stood ahead of the games. Nigel Seeley, the bet Butler, is with us today. Nigel, I think most of us got this wrong. We were looking to go under. It was over, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was an unbelievable market. I mean, it was one that the punters got completely wrong. The bookmakers absolutely cleaned up. And it was a market that they just kept on going, whatever stage that the bookmakers put it up throughout the competition. Let's have a look at who started up. They started up at around about 22.5 goals on July the 16th, here, just before the games. That actually started off at 23.5 prior to the games. So the money came in under 23.5, and it continued these under 22.5 at even money. It went down to 21.5 as well, and the money kept on going on. And that was a familiar trend. When we started not getting the gold medals at the start, we waited a couple of days before we got the first gold medal. The money kept on coming in at sort of, I think the market got down to about as low as 19.5. And even when the gold started to come, they came again for under at 29.5, 28.5, 27.5, all rates down. This was a very, very, very painful market for the punters, a great market for the bookmakers. And I think what happened is all the pundits out there thought how disappointing England have been in the Euro Championships, how disappointing England have been in all the other competitions. The hype was built up and we wouldn't be able to deliver, but we did deliver. And luckily enough for punters, especially spread betting punters, we never got the 2 goals in the ones we expected to get. We expected to get one with Addington, we were hot favourites as well with Cavendish. But it could have been a lot worse this market. You have got the ones that the big prices like Rutherford, as Alan said there. The total medal mark here, 62.5. Again, small money here, really. Small money here was wagered on the under, but not substantial money. It wasn't a really heavy betting market. What people expected we thought the line would be about right. We thought it'd be around about this market, and there was very, very small betting activity. You're looking at about a fifth of the activity on this market compared to this market, and some bookmakers even reported a tenth of the money being wagered on the goals compared to the total. So this wasn't really much. It was all about the goals. Punters have got their money, but they're getting it all back on the football season. Back to you guys.
Just very briefly before we talk about one or two individual performances, when you price up Rio in a few years' time, do you think it'll be similar to that? Are you similar to the makeup? Are you 29 goals, something like that, or will you dampen down expectations?
Well, I think, as Nigel might say, there are some lines already out with some of the established high street bookmakers who like to go up early because they've got their shops there. That 27.5 I've seen on the GB goals, which is obviously be a couple under what we've done this time round. But I think there was always going to be maybe an overreaction there. So I just wonder whether or not. We did talk about home advantage and we did rubbish it because we said that the attitude of the athletes in this country might be that the expectation actually affects them more.
Usain Bolt, of course, won double gold. We had plenty of conversation and discussion about Usain Bolt against Johan Blake, and we were trying to take him on. I think the bookmakers were as well. I mean, that changed over the course of the 100-metre weekend because the semi-final changed everything because Usain Bolt was so good. But ahead of the 100 metres, 1 or 2 question marks, and when you look back at it now, Usain Bolt at near even money.
Yeah, and you could still get that after he ran his first heat in the 100 metres. I know that one big bookmaker went out to go and get him and had their fingers burnt on it, but I think there was too much. You can read too much into the heats, and the fact that he'd obviously just did the bare minimum in those heats was, some people read far too much into that, and obviously he drifted again. But we were talking before the games actually got underway. We were talking about the drift that he had when Blake was out qualifying him over in Jamaica, and even then he approached a big price. So there've been 2 very good opportunities for professional punters to get involved if they really thought that Bolt was the man, and obviously he was.
Yeah, one man to point you in the right direction was, of course, our very own Butler, because you made a good case for Usain Bolt. You were talking about the double as well, Nigel. I mean, it was amazing how the prices changed over that weekend for the 100 metres, but you outlined it ahead of the action, suggesting, well, Blake's only done his running in the Caribbean, not in Europe, and that for you was key.
Well, I think it was. I think you're never going to get priced like 10 to 11 Usain Bolt in a major championship. And I just thought the hype about this young lad was too much. I mean, he's never been in a major competition like this with Bolt. Of him. You had him in the World Championship, he won it really by default with a full start. But these prices here, this will go down as a bet that everybody you meet in the pub for the next 5 years has had. I was on Usain Bolt at 10 or 11 at 10. I was on the double at 7 4. I was easy money. This wasn't really a bet that people did back. You know, I spoke about it here, but believe it or not, I didn't even back it. So I'll be honest with you. I said it was a great value bet, but I think the Olympic got too much. I mean, 10 to 11 Usain Bolt, in hindsight, on the best bet of all time. The 200 metres, which I thought was even a better bet for him, even though he was a shorter price, he was a 2-on shot because the fact that, you know, everyone was saying about this full start, he's worried about the start, the 200 metres, it takes it away. I think the market was really skewed by Blake's form. He was too short. There's no doubt about it. He is a star of the future. He's a future world champion, Olympic champion at 100 and 200 metres, and his leg in the relay was sensational. But it was a little bit too early, and people doubted the greatest athlete in the last 10 years. And Usain Bolt come good, and all those punters taking the 13 to 8, the double, 6 to 4, the double come good. But unfortunately, even telling you lot to get it, I never backed it. But there'll be a lot of people you meet tonight who backed it.
Take your own advice, Nigel. That's the message there. One other market that we can reflect on and look at the odds from how they started to where they finished, or at least how they started, the total golds, because I think China was put up in the Racing Post and they started very, very strongly. But in the end, the USA won it pretty comfortably, didn't they? Yeah,
they did. And even towards the end, I think people were trying to say it's not over, it's not over. They've got a few strong events in the last 4 or 5 days. But the USA never really troubled from a position where, again, very much like that 100 metres, you look at it again now and say, well, you take away the uplift of it being in Beijing for China's medal haul, in the last Olympic Games, and say now that on a balanced field or certainly neutral venue over here in Great Britain, the USA were a very, very good bet at 4-6.
Yeah, amazing, Nigel, how the market stood ahead of the action in London 2012.
Yeah, I mean, Chrissy Graham and Trevor here, I know they got their triathletes right, and they got a few swimmers right. They got this drastically wrong. They said that China was 7-4. I said no, I fancy the USA at 4-6 big time. Again, I didn't back it. I mean, I talk a good game, but I don't back any of these things. Story of my life. But anyway, where the interesting thing was made, the USA started here at 4-6, China 6-4. China went off, but they won all the events you expected them to win at the beginning. Alan made a very good point on the punters about 2 or 3 weeks ago. He said that China were 101, 100-1 on, 50-1 on the events, and they won them all. And the Americans were sort of like, there were certainties to frame. American markets, though, they come good in the track and field, and where they won it was a swimming pool. There's no doubt about it. They've got a guy who got more medals than most countries in it, so that gives you a great start at the beginning. This is I think after the first week, the odds on here completely flipped. China went to sort of 1-2, America went to 7-4, and that was the time I advised Chrissy Graham and all them boys to have a little saver, because you know you got to be careful, because the Americans were coming good down the straight, and they did, and they won it. They won it in a canter, really. They won it very easily. But 4-6 before the competition, 6-4 to China. Great Britain 100-1. Long way to go there, but back to you boys there. But America come good.
Nigel, we talked about 1 or 2 short price things that have come in there, but there was some big value knocking around some of the events, wasn't there?
Yeah, I mean, the 400-metre hurdles was the big one, obviously. I mean, Sanchez, who was a big favourite on the night, was backed into sort of from 25-1 at the start. Here he was a 25-1 shot. It was a disappointment, really, of Di Green. He was a 7-2 shot, who had as team captain had a real, very, very poor games in the 400-metre hurdles as well as the relay. And when he just failed to come through, they knew that 7-2 was wrong. Coulson 7-5 was the favourite. Angelo Taylor 16-1, and what happened was the top 2 just disappointed in the heats, and this 25-1 shot, who was an odds-on favourite going into the race, suddenly become a big runner, and he was actually joint favourite with Coulson around about 6-4. But the reason why is because the front Di Green here just disappointed massively. Angelo Taylor disappointed massively, and you've taken 35% of your margin straight away. So there has to be value somewhere, which leads to a shot winner, and that shot winner was Felix Sanchez. You will not be getting 25-1 about him again.
Speaking of value, Alan, is there any value when it comes to the BBC Sports Personality of the Year market? Because after Bradley Wiggins' exploits, not just in the Olympics but the Tour de France as well, but when he struck gold at London 2012, 1 or 2 firms I think may well have paid out on Wiggins getting that particular gong in December. It's all changed now, though, hasn't it, with Mo Farah's double on the track?
Yeah, they weren't counting on Mo Farah, and obviously he's made the Wiggins price now become backable, and the market has become live again. But you look in behind those top 2 and you realise that some of the quotes, amazingly, and you know, it's always easy to say this after the event. We've put some graphics up there where we've seen some great bets. Felix Sanchez 25-1. But earlier this year, when the first prices were knocking around for BBC Sports Personality, Murray got into the Wimbledon final. Obviously, he performed even better at the Olympics, but he got into the Wimbledon final and everyone thought, well, that's a done deal. Amazingly, there were 5 or 6 England players from Euro 2012 just before the tournament, in around the fringes of the top 20 in this market. They won't even make the top 10, and the shortlist is quite likely to be all people that played a part in the Olympics for Team GB.
I think we can have a look at the market. Nigel, what do you make of the BBC Sports Personality market as it stands at the moment?
Well, do you reckon I should throw out my slip on Jordan Henderson? Should I give it away as a loser? Oh, Jesus. Oh, that's a bit of a no. I thought we had a chance of a place. Anyway, I mean, this Bradley Wiggins has been paid out by some bookmakers. Went to 8-1 on 7-1. Looked absolute certainty, didn't he? But Mo Farah, 5-2. I think there's still value in this market, and I think the market comes from Mo Farah. That Saturday night, the audience watching it, this story, his wife being pregnant, you know, his daughter running onto the track of the 5,000, his head almost rolling in that spit that the contestant put in. We felt sorry for him on that. These are images that will stay with you forever and ever and ever. I haven't been the greatest of fan of the Olympics, but I was out of my chair cheering like anything for Mo Farah and the way he won it. And I think that the 23 million people watching that event, if a small proportion of them had a bet, I think he could be a decent bit of value here. Bookies obviously have got the money for Wiggins. They've come in for big prices, 7-4, 6-4. So at the moment, they've got a book here that's probably lopsided with Wiggins' money. So they're trying to get 5-2 here on Mo Farah. I know we're a long way off, the 3 or 4 months away before this is decided, but I think Farah here at 5-2 is a fantastic trading price. If you wanted to take a little bet now at 5-2, I'm sure you'll be able to get out of a small bit of profit. I don't believe it'll be a 5-2 shot come that night when you see all the footage. Back to you, boys.
Alan?
Well, this is a funny market because, as Nigel will know, people are a bit contrary when they're trying to actually vote for their winner of the BBC Sports Personality. And if it's rammed down people's throats for 2 months solid that Brad Wiggins is the favourite and Mo Farah obviously doesn't have much of a chance, then the money tends to come for that second favourite. And we've seen short price favourites get beat just because people think they're home and hosed and not worth voting for. Very important point to make when you're betting on anything that has a phone vote attached to it.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I guess that the athletics, the Olympic vote, could be split to a certain extent. It'll be fascinating to find out a little bit later on in the year. We've got much more to come on the Punter tonight, though. We're going to be talking football next. Don't go away. Welcome back to the Punter as we endeavour to point you in the right direction when it comes to the midweek football. We have got Capital One Cup first round fixtures, of course, coming away tonight. We'll delve into those shortly. First of all, though, Alan, let's just reflect on the Community Shield from the weekend. A fractious encounter at Villa Park. No Olympic spirit whatsoever as Branislav Ivanovic was sent off for Chelsea against Manchester City. I didn't think it was a full house at Villa Park from a bookmaker's point of view, with the punters getting stuck into this, even though it was the last day of the Olympics?
I think everybody was enjoying the fact there was a bit of live football on a Sunday afternoon, and you can't really beat that. And obviously, it was covered on ITV, terrestrial TV. So plenty of people got the chance to watch it. And yeah, we saw the normal kind of bets that you'd see for a Community Shield game, in that no lumpy singles on teams to actually win the game, but you know, correct scores, first goal scorers, they were quite popular. And actually, we've managed to nick a few quid on the game, really, because nobody expected that many goals, 5 goals, and the actual scorers of the goals, not many of them were well backed, even on our each way markets for first goal scorer.
Any interest this morning on the Premier League? Because 4 of the last 5 Community Shield winners have gone on to win the Premier League. Not that the stat is worth too much if you delve further back into the archive. I think it's 7 of the last 20. But sometimes, you know, punters see Manchester City on TV, it's the new season, they think, oh, they were impressive or otherwise. Did you see any more money this morning for either of those two sides, one way or the other?
Well, one thing that happened to me last year is that I managed to get tickets to the Manchester derby in this game at Wembley, and I came out of the ground thinking that City could never win the title. They'll never win the title like that. They can't let their nearest rivals back in. He doesn't know how to coach defence. You know, rubbishing everything about City, and then obviously they went on to win it, albeit paper-thin margin. But I don't think you can read too much into it. But it is an interesting stat because, you know, United left Wembley that day after beating their closest rivals on a high for the whole season and didn't collect 1 trophy.
Be interesting to see what happens with City and indeed Chelsea after that, the more meaningful games for those two clubs, of course, this weekend. More meaningful for the lower league sides when it comes to the Capital One first round fixtures. We had plenty of them at the weekend. Plenty of short price favourites didn't come up for punters, unfortunately. It'd be interesting to see what happens tonight. And I'm going to talk about Fleetwood first and all. And obviously, as a Blue Square man and a Blue Square Premier League expert, I think we can say you must know plenty about Fleetwood, because I don't want to say they romped away with the title last year, because Wrexham gave them a run for their money for much of the league, but they will be looking to start their life in the league and their first ever Capital One Cup fixture or League Cup fixture with a win, I presume.
I'm not so sure, actually, Dan. No, I'm not so sure. I think I actually think that Fleetwood will use this as a bit of experience tonight, but I think the prices do not reflect the fact that this isn't a priority of theirs, and I think they'll be challenging for the League 2 title. We've certainly got them up there in the prices for the League 2 title, but competitions like like the League Cup, the equivalent in non-league would be the FA Trophy, which it does have a lovely prize at the end of it, and obviously one non-league club will win it. But this is not something that's going to be on Fleetwood's radar. And in fact, last year, Mickey Mellon, their boss, he put out a really weak side against Northwich Victoria in the FA Trophy, and they lost in the first round of that, and this is the only sort of real form that I can marry up against what in his head will be a Carling a Capital One Cup fixture. Must get these sponsors right, because we do invest a lot of money, our sponsors. And I really do think that Nottingham Forest are a fantastic bet tonight, because I do think that Fleetwood might play a half and half team.
Okay, let's get to Nigel Seeley, the bet ball. Are you having this, Nigel? Because I'm just thinking, you know, Fleetwood, good team, they're up, they want to win, or do they? How are you seeing? Are you with Alan?
I am with Alan, Dan. I really am. I think the new manager at Nottingham Forest will be very keen as well to impress. He's got, you know, they've got money, they've got players who need to impress, fringe players who want to play part of the exciting times at Forest. And I think the board there will want to say, as well as promotion, we want a good cup run, and this gives you a fantastic good chance for a cup run. If you look at the odds here, I mean, 23-20 Nottingham Forest, I would expect them to be odds on in this game. I thought they would have been about 10-11, 5-6, that kind of price, but 23-20 is what you can get. A little bit bigger than 11-10, that price. You know, that's one of the best prices around there. The draw 5-2, there was an awful lot of draws at the weekend in the Carling Cup, a lot of games. You know both teams are going to be very, very fit. It's the first game of the season, so you know it's going to be in for a tight encounter. Not going to be much left. It may take a bit of time to get that goal, but I think class will come through tonight. Fleetwood, if you fancy a shock, 21-10. I honestly believe they've got bigger things to concentrate this season on. They know if they get past the Forest, they're probably going to get knocked out in the next round anyway. And I think that's a great point. I not necessarily saw when they played in the Carling Cup last season, they got beat 7-1 or something like that, got hammered. Sorry, what was it? Yeah, the Carling Cup. And then the Nottingham Forest here, though, 23-20. I just think that's a price that's very, very much too much to be. And especially if you see some first team players' names on the team sheet, that's a price that will definitely contract. So at the moment, the bookies have been very, very happy to take on favourites, and they've proven right on the first day of the season. But tonight, I think they've gone too big, some of these.
Just briefly, you want a further point on this match?
Yeah, no, just correct quickly. Nigel was saying last season it was the FA Cup where they lost 7-1 against Blackpool, equivalent opposition from the Championship, and again it's something that they took very seriously, the game against Blackpool. It was a local derby in the FA Cup. They put their first team out. I don't think they'll put their first team out tonight. And the biggest transfer news, although they've got loads of players in Fleetwood, good players at that, even Joey Barton's there for a loan. Jamie Vardy, who made everything tick for them last year, has gone to Leicester. So I'm all in on that Nottingham Forest price, and it's not often that I will go with a confident tip on this particular show.
Yeah, Vardy was top goal scorer by quite some way. Let's delve further into the fixtures. The Bet Butler's got details of Oldham versus Sheffield Wednesday next.
Yeah, this is another one. I think the punters tonight have got to look at whether they want to take on these favourites away from home, which is a big thing that really people would turn around and say you shouldn't do. But if you look at the odds tonight here, I mean, Sheffield Wednesday, similar kind of prices. These are very, very similar kind of prices, apart from a couple of little ticks here or there. Sheffield Wednesday 11-10 today against Oldham 5-2. When they played last season, Sheffield Wednesday done the business on them. I think Sheffield Wednesday 11-10 again represent good value. I think Sheffield Wednesday have come on a lot more since last season. They put a great run under David Jones. Won the league, and I think they'll come second in the league. I think they've got a great chance of pushing even further this year and could be challenging for a playoff place. Oldham, on the other hand, under Paul Dickoff, we know what to expect. We know the first 25-30 minutes are going to be quite tight. We know exactly the first day of the season, not much given away. But 11-10 here again, this is another enticing price for punters. You would usually expect about 4-5, 5-6, these kind of prices, I think, for Carling Cup. I'm at it. Capital One Cup. We call it the Rumbelows Cup next. I mean, they usually expect that. But because it's the first day of the season, and that is why I think these bookies are going odds against. You're not going to see quotes like this, but because it's the first day of the season, because they've got a lot of your money in their back pockets from the opening fixtures, and a lot of these games ending in draws at the weekend, I think these prices have gone a little bit too big today, and I'll be going again with Sheffield Wednesday 11-10.
And Butler, what about the Preston Huddersfield game? Huddersfield minus 1 or 2 players for this fixture, but they are the team in the higher division.
Yeah, they're in the higher division. Obviously, good things I hope from both of the sides. I think they've got massive tasks to Huddersfield, especially to stay in the Championship. So it's going to be very interesting on a domestic level here. I think this is one favourite that I would probably swerve. I think Huddersfield could be a struggle here. I'll be looking at the draw here at 5-2 because I think Huddersfield know that their best finish is to finish fourth and bottom in the Championship, stay in that Championship. The cup run is great, but at this stage of the season, let's be fit, get all our players fit, and get them ready for the weekend. And this game, I don't think there's much between the two of them. The bookies haven't really got much between them, and I think a draw here could be a runner at 5-2. I don't think that both of these sides will field their strongest sides, and I think you will see in the first 15 to 20 minutes where this game's going to go. But at a value purpose, when you see really two teams that you can't really split. I always like the draw, and in this game, I think with Huddersfield, their whole season is geared. If they get off to a bad start, they could be in trouble in the Championship, and they won't be risking any players for this game here today. So I'm going for the draw here at 5-2.
Yeah, it could be interesting if Jordan Rhodes stays at Huddersfield. He won't be playing for this fixture because he's away on international duty, but you always feel that he is key to Huddersfield's fortunes. Just more generally on the Capital One Cup, Alan, obviously at this stage we've got Championship, League One, League Two sides playing. Then in the next round it will be the Premier League teams joining in, and then after that those teams that are involved in European football, so Chelsea and Arsenal, Liverpool and so on, get a bye to the latter stages. And when we've looked at the winners of this competition, I mean, it is the big guns that win. Everyone says, oh, they're putting out the Carling Cup team, as we used to call it, the Capital One Cup team. But, you know, come February, only just when European football has restarted, it's like, well, that cup competition's out of the way. It doesn't encroach on the run into the Premier League season like the FA Cup does. Maybe that's how managers see it now.
Well, it really doesn't, and I think it just shows that there's plenty of quality in those B teams or the what we used to call the League Cup squads, like you're saying, for those teams, that they can actually get by these fixtures. They don't have to win many games. They enter it really late, and by that time, other clubs have got worries either up or down in their respective divisions. And a team like Chelsea can go away and win at a club like Middlesbrough from the mid-table of the Championship quite easily with their second string team. And then it gets to the latter stages, and I think only Birmingham have been the real shock winner out of the last few years in this particular tournament. There will be others. That's just one that sticks in my mind as an Arsenal fan. But I just think that you look down the list of winners, as you say, and there aren't many shocks there, and you can't afford to try and be too clever with this market and look for a bit of each way value in between. Just plump with someone that you think's got a very good squad that will be trying to prove themselves.
Yeah, it's interesting because you mentioned Arsenal there, and for that one season, Arsene Wenger, to a certain extent, targeted the League Cup, and we've seen in the past.
Shows that I've got history on this particular channel of rubbishing Mr. Wenger. So,
but occasionally you will get. I mean, Jose Mourinho targeted it when he first came to Chelsea because he thought, I just want to get a trophy on, that I have won. And occasionally you might pick out maybe Di Matteo this time around, maybe Brendan Rodgers this time around, I don't know. It's possible that could happen. Let's get the Bet Butler's view on the Carling Cup. We'll get some prices on it as well, because it's wide open as it should be, Nigel.
Yeah, it is wide open. I think the conundrum, the bookies and the punters got exactly what you're saying there. What team you're going to play, what team's going to happen. If we look at the odds, you have Manchester City here as the favourites. I mean, they're favourites for everything domestically wise, and they're 13-2. Now, that could turn out to be one of the best bets of all season, because Manchester City's reserve squad are arguably better than anybody else in the competition at the top floor, and they're better than anybody else. So even though we're saying that it could be a shock winner, we tend to see the top ones winning every season. And Manchester City at 13-2 top the market. Personally, I would have them a little bit shorter than that, because I think they are capable of winning. I mean, Manchester City reserves against Arsenal reserves. I'll be back in Manchester City reserves all day long. Arsenal 9-1, Chelsea at 9-1. Again, we know they're strong. Defending champions Liverpool, they're at 9-1, and Manchester United at 9-1, both recent winners. My team in there, QPR, I think might have a good run in this competition. 40-1, I think that's a decent little each way bet. I mean, I remember Leicester City winning it under Martin O'Neill when he just sort of got in a new players. He just went through a new thing. They targeted this up as well, and I think QPR at that kind of price with the players they bought, well, I think they'll have a good season. I think at 40-1 that could be a decent bet. But Man City topped the list here at 13-2. I think that, even though you're saying it's a shock competition and people play their reserves, Man City reserves are equally good to beat any of these teams, even their first team. So I think Man City at 13-2, worthy favourites.
I mean, we always try and pick out a 40-1, 66-1 shot. And yes, Birmingham won it. Yes, we've had Wigan to the final. Yes, we've had Villa to the final. But if you're looking for win only, you're better off picking two of the top four, aren't you? You
really are, and I can't disagree with Nigel's tip on Man City. And when you talked about Mourinho targeting this in his first season at Chelsea, he did have 22 players that were capable of playing in the first or second team, and that actual second team that he put out had Carlo Cudicini in goal. It had internationals all over the pitch, and I think they were backed into 9-2 on the night of their first game when the team news came through from 11-2, because everyone went, Christ, he's playing some really good players in this. He is interested in it, and they went on to romp to it.
Yeah, sometimes you can certainly see exactly what the manager's doing when you get those team lineups through. That'll be, of course, later on in the year when the big boys enter the fray when it comes to the Capital One Cup. Welcome back to the Punter as we talk transfer targets and whether the odds are in the favour of the punter or the bookmaker when it comes to three key personnel. The trio that we're going to talk about, inevitably, one of them is Robin van Persie. We'll be highlighting Leighton Baines' potential move as well, and indeed Rafael van der Vaart. But we're going to start with Van Persie because he's in the news again, and apparently, Alan, it's bordering on done deal with Manchester United. I never know with these things because you read some newspapers and it's Manchester United, sometimes it's Manchester City, sometimes he's not going anywhere and deals have fallen through. Difficult for punters to get a handle on it. What about bookmakers?
It is difficult, and you really have to weigh up people's strategies in dealing with the media, and I'm talking about the key personnel in this when they speak, because I can show you articles from around this time of the year for the last 5 or 6 seasons that said Nasri's definitely staying, quote Mr Wenger, Fabregas is staying, quote Henry is staying, quote Vieira's staying. He says what's right for Arsenal, and that's one thing I do massively agree with him on. So you don't read anything into we'd like him to stay as being the final word on whether or not Robin van Persie will actually stay, because, as I say, it's happened before, those quotes have come out before, and the player has still moved on. And as far as I understand it, Robin van Persie will be a Manchester United player by September the 1st. Now, this is the important thing here, because our transfer markets are set to the end of the transfer deadline. Some bookmakers are actually pricing up whether or not he'll start the season for Arsenal. So will he be an Arsenal player on the first day of the season? That slightly confuses matters, because if things take their time this week, and I understand that it will be this week that he does move, if things do take their time, then maybe someone will be a winner of that first bet, but a loser in the second bet.
Yeah, it'd be interesting that. I mean, the market we're going to look at here, Butler, is the start of the season market. So that's this weekend. Talk to us about it.
Yeah, obviously this is this Saturday's game against Sunderland. Will he be an Arsenal player then or not? I mean, the thing is here now, money talks on most things in gambling, and certainly money starts talking on markets like this with 3 or 4 days to go before it eventually happens. So I think you want to see big movements in these prices in the next 2 or 3 days. I mean, at the moment it's 130 on, 10 to 3 on, whichever way you like to prefer, but it's still big odds on. You've got to put £10 on to win £3. So the bookies are saying it's around about 76%. Probability that he leaves Arsenal. He starts the season at Arsenal. Sorry, let's start this again. He starts the season at Arsenal. I got that wrong there. 12 to 5. He doesn't start the season. So they're saying that he looks like he's going to be there. But what we're hearing here is that a difference in periods. It's just a question now of how quickly this deal can be done, and I think it can be done very quickly. So if I was going to have a bet, I would actually say no. He doesn't start the season here at 12 to 5. But just be very careful when you bet on these markets with 3 or 4 days to go. If you start seeing these prices move dramatically in the next 24 to 48 hours, there's a timeline there, and it obviously means that somebody knows something much better than what we do. Bookies will be very reluctant to lay a big bet on it. You know, it'll be a tenner, £5 a pound, which is great. You know, if you're watching a bet, you know something. But I think if things you read and people we're speaking to here are saying things can happen quite quickly. So I'm saying no, 12 to 5. I actually got that price the wrong way around at the beginning, because I thought it was certainty that he was going to be done. So if I'm getting 12 to 5 here, I want to bet at those odds, because I think this can be done very, very quickly indeed.
The market's going to be interesting because the closer we get to Saturday, obviously they're going to fluctuate fairly wildly, you would have thought, and deals can be done quickly. Now, that particular market, and as you say, there's 2 very different markets here, start of the season and end of the transfer window. But 3 weeks ago, you know, those odds would have been very, very different, because after Robin van Persie came out and said that he wasn't going to sign a new contract, then I think everyone presumed that a deal probably would have been done by now.
Well, the funny thing is, again, this is probably why it just threw Nigel there, those prices, but Arsenal weren't even being quoted in his club on the first day of the season. That's how certain.
Yeah.
It was money back if he stayed at Arsenal. They weren't actually being quoted in amongst the prices. So it does go to show that there's been a bit of a turnaround. But if you're a punter and you're just watching this as a market, or you're just picking up your paper and you're reading things, you're reading a very filtered version of the story, as I said, and it doesn't mean that nothing's happening behind the scenes. And I think something will happen behind the scenes. I think it's very brave, whichever bookmaker's offering that market, they're very brave to do it so time specific, with only a few days left to this stage of the weekend. And it could be that, you know, could be just something to do with admin or an international clearance or something like that could happen on Friday that means that, yes, he's an Arsenal player Saturday, but doesn't move to Manchester United till Monday, and he doesn't play in the game either, and you would still lose your bet.
Yeah, it's a very, very difficult one to get right, but if you can get it right, you can be well rewarded. Let's move on to Leighton Baines, and the reason we could talk about Leighton Baines, twofold, I guess, because there's been lots of speculation about Leighton Baines over the course of the summer, but the fact that Everton have sold Jack Rodwell to Manchester City, and we always think that Everton usually have got to let one of their better players go, unfortunately for Everton fans, over the course of a summer transfer session. This time it potentially is going to be Rodwell and not Baines. Could be both, but I think the fact that Rodwell gone means perhaps Baines is going to stay. How do you read it?
Yeah, I think that Everton, without a huge investor at the moment, are one of those clubs that are vulnerable to lose their best players each year, and it just goes to show the kind of job that David Moyes manages to do for them. The other thing that I would say here, with the Rodwell situation and the fact that he's going, a lot of punters have speculated that Everton are going to have a very good season. So they're being backed on the kind of markets that you can get with those mid-table teams. So, yeah, they're back to break into the top 6. The handicap, very interesting on the handicap, very well backed on the handicap. Also backed in a few places to outperform their Merseyside rivals, Liverpool. So anyone that's parted with cash early on won't like to see this Rodwell story, and certainly won't like to see it followed up with Baines.
Butler, how are we seeing this market? Baines going to stay or go?
I think the key to it, obviously, is that where he's going to go. And obviously, everyone was telling us before it was a done deal, he was going to go to Manchester United. And now they've got this sight set on another player, Robin van Persie. So I think if the Robin van Persie does it, have Man United got cash to go and buy their money? I don't think they have. So I think if the Robin van Persie deal is crucial on this betting as well. Now, this is to leave during the transfer window, unlike the betting we saw there for the first game of the season. It's 11-5 that he goes during the transfer window. But the trouble is, like, can you imagine someone going in January and saying, I'll tell you what we need to do, we need to go and spend £25 million on a left back. He's not in a position that people are going to be needing to enforce their team in the transfer window. You go and buy a striker, or you go and buy a central defender, or a playmaker. He's a left back, left-sided midfield player at a push if he goes forward. He's not going to be on the top of people's wanted lists during the transfer window, and he's not going to do something in the first part of this season that's going to say, I'll tell you what, we must buy Leighton Baines. He looks, the bookies are saying he's going to start there. He's 10-3 on, again, the same price as Robin van Persie was. It looks like he's not going anywhere. 11-5 that he moves before that transfer window. But I think the deal here all hinges on how much money Manchester United have. Manchester United seem to be the only people out there interested in Leighton Baines. It was a done deal, but whether he goes there, we don't think he will.
Butler, what about Rafa van der Vaart? What about his odds to be with Spurs for the forthcoming season, or indeed be playing elsewhere?
Yeah, I mean, this is the drill leave during the transfer window. Exactly the same kind of prices, exactly the same odds as you saw there for Leighton Baines. But I think there's more chance of Van der Vaart going, I really do. I think he may not be the kind of player that AVB wants. He wants to work with the youth players. He wants to bring his own people in. And Van der Vaart's quite opinionated. He's quite a forceful person in the dressing room. And the thing is that, the problems he got in at Chelsea, and I think if things don't go well over a few weeks, people could turn on AVB here, and I think it could be a battle of the initials.
He's going to be under pressure, Andre Villas-Boas, if he sells fans' favourites and he doesn't perform. I mean, Van der Vaart divides opinion, I think, with neutrals, but certainly from a Spurs point of view, I think they took to him, didn't they?
Oh, they certainly did, but the interesting thing that I'm seeing from the Tottenham fans that I interact with, and I try not to interact with too many, but on Twitter and the people that I speak to, their rage is pointed in the direction of Daniel Levy at the moment, and actually spending money and giving AVB the kind of money that he needs to compete. So I think if this transfer actually goes through, as long as AVB keeps quiet and passes it off as if it was a Levy decision, then I think he'll be quite fine to be able to start the season with really low expectations and a ready-made excuse behind him as to why he hasn't started so well. I think the pressure will come somewhere mid-season for him, and looking at Tottenham's fixtures, I think they're slightly easier than Arsenal's to kick off with, and after 10 games I think they could be in a good enough position for him to be in a settled role at the club. Just
briefly, to keep it on the football theme, let's take a look at the England-Italy match odds with the bet Butler. This is a friendly in Switzerland in midweek, Nigel.
I mean, it's the most ludicrous decision ever about this game, isn't it? I mean, we had Carling, was it?
Capital One.
Capital One. Oh my
Littlewoods.
God! We got a long one season of that. That's it. That's even kicked off. We got international friendlies before balls being kicked domestically in the league. Crazy. England are 6-4. Who's going to back them? The team they're putting out. Italy are going to be exactly the same kind of weakened side, 2-1, and the draw 23-10. And you know what? Just looking at it straight away, the draw 23-10 just jumps off the page. It looks as though it's going to be, there'll be no bookings in the game. There'll be going to be a tackle. The players will be put out very fringe squads for both teams, be all sorts of changes. The game will just fizzle out to a non-entity, and 23-10 in what potentially could be the lowest bet England football match in the history of betting for the at least 20 years I can remember. But the draw at 23-10 is the only only option for any punter out there. You can't back England at 6-4, and you certainly can't back the Italians at 2-1. The draw all the way.
We're going to take a look at this match in more detail later on in the week, but very briefly, we're expecting plenty of money for this or not? Is it
not at all?
Even lost in the post, this one?
Not at all. I think there were a couple of people on our desk this morning that actually said, are England playing Italy in midweek? It's totally gone under the radar. The prices look about right. 13-2, 0-0. How about that? No goal score. I know you don't like goals, Nigel.
Yeah, it'd be an interesting one, I think. We are going to take a look at that game a little bit later on in the week in more detail. We're going to talk Blue Square, Prem, and indeed North and South with Alan Alger of Blue Square after the break, so don't go away. Welcome back to the final part of the Punter, where we delve into the non-league action. And I'm pleased to say that Alan Alger of Blue Square is with me. So we are going to talk Blue Square Prem. We're going to get the value bets when it comes to Blue Square North and South as well. Sticking on the Blue Square Prem. First of all, we've seen Crawley and Fleetwood over the last few years throw plenty of money at it and become short price favourites, well-backed favourites that have won the league. What have we got this time around?
Well, everybody from just on the fringes of the industry that doesn't pay much attention to our non-league, and why not? It's fantastic. But I keep getting asked, where's the Crawley Fleetwood, bet that I can have this year? Because I put a few people onto Crawley at big prices, double-figure prices. They were backed in, obviously, into as short as 5-1 as the first ball was kicked. Same for Fleetwood. Managed to, I think some people managed to get about 10-1. Unfortunately with us, because I wrote off their chances. But this year I'm going to do the same thing again, and I've put Forest Green Rovers at a very big price because they've got money, and they've got the kind of money under their owner Dale Vince that would blow Crawley and Fleetwood combined out of the water. It's only if he actually dips his hand in his pocket, because he's about 500 from the Sunday Times rich list. If he did want to divert some of that money to football, or more of that money to football, Forest Green would be a good bet at 10-1, but I don't think they are.
OK, we'll get your thoughts in just a second. Let's have a look at the market. Butler.
Yeah, I mean, the top of the market. Forest Green there, 10-1 market moves. They were bigger than that because Alan put his millions on. He's 13th in the richest this hour. He's going to move up when Forest Green win this one here. Luton Town have been the team that have always been backed. I mean, I know Alan gets a bit of stick on Twitter from the Luton fans. They doesn't give them a credit they deserve. But he's saying they've got a good chance this year, but they didn't get off to a good start. They were 2-0 down at home to Gateshead, come back 2-2, some fighting spirit, but their crowd of support was very lucky enough to be at the Blue Square final at Wembley last season, and the support they brought was warranted out of a league form. But it didn't get them through. 11-4 they are there. Mansfield involved in a humdinger at the weekend, 5-1. Wrexham, Flash Gordon Watson, his tip here at 6-1. I go along with Flash here. I think they've got a bit of support. I know Al knows a lot more about them, a local boy there. Grimsby were into championship some years ago, 15-2. Forest Green Rovers there, the Money Boys 10-1, and Cambridge at 14-1. But Luton are the pace setters. All the money anti-posters come for them, but will they do it this season? They've got the crowd to do it, and they showed a little bit of hunger at the weekend.
Where is the value?
Well, it might just be creeping back with Luton Town. Can't agree with Flash at all, but I very rarely do. I was at Wrexham at the weekend. 98 points last season. Fantastic effort. They had a very easy game at the weekend against Woking. They won that 3-1. But I still think that they might struggle. And it's very hard for any side finishing in the top 4 in this division that doesn't go up via being champions or the playoffs. So that's at least 2 teams a season to finish around that gap. They do not perform well the next season.
So come on,
regardless.
Who's the team?
So, well, I've tipped, as Nigel said, I've tipped up Luton everywhere.
Okay.
And I think that this is one season where they'll do it. They've been favourites the last 3 seasons. I don't like tipping favourites, but they've got the right team there. Bit of a blip at the weekend, but you'll see them come good.
Let's hope so, because they've suffered heartbreak, of course, over recent seasons. What about at the bottom? Let's get to the prices. Butler.
Yeah, the bottom of the table is very competitive here. As you can see, there's a lot of teams there. No one can really split them. I think there's a big divide here. Obviously, you talk about the Premier League. There's also a big guide here. The money boys are the ones who have and ones who have not. Hyde are the favourites here to finish in the bottom 4, 8 to 13. Telford 8 to 11. Dartford 4 to 5. Nuneaton 5 to 6. Ebbsfleet evens and Barrow 6 to 4. You know what? You don't want to hear me. I have not got a clue. I'll go back to Al. He's the man who knows who's going to finish at the bottom.
Well, a rather silly rumour exists about Hyde, and that is that Manchester City fund them. It's completely ridiculous, because if they wanted to, they'd obviously fund them to the extent where we'd all know about it. What they do, they pay for the upkeep of the ground to make sure that the pitch is in pristine condition, and they have convinced Hyde from playing in red kits and having a red and black branded stadium to go to Sky Blue. So there was a bit of a sellout on behalf of Hyde, but it was the right move for the club at the time. But they're not having thousands and thousands of pounds pumped in by Manchester City. They won the league in the Blue Square Bet North last year through a very, very good squad that played good football on a good pitch under Gary Lowe.
So who do you think might struggle then? Who would you be the teams that
My
might
tips to struggle, Barrow have had lots of difficulties of late. Telford will struggle. I think Nuneaton, they need a good season, but I think Dartford will also go down.
Let's dip down into the North and South leagues when it comes to the Blue Square divisions. North, I think we're going to look at first of all. Butler, how do we price this one?
Yeah, I mean, here we've got, it's a very open field. I think, again, we talk about money. Money's so important in this league. It's incredible. Halifax Town, 3 to 1 there. Chester at 7 to 2. A couple of outsiders, Bishop Stortford at 12. Brackley Town at 10s. And Gainsborough Trinity, 8 to 1. But it's about the front two. It's Halifax Town at 3. 7 to 2 Chester. Back to you, Al.
Well, people will be surprised to see sides like Bishop Stortford and Brackley in the Blue Square Bet North, but the geography has suggested that so many northern teams are really good at going into the Premier and then kicking on, so we're not having the right geographical split from relegation. And because of that, I would say sides like Chester and Halifax are set to maybe progress through the leagues in the next few seasons. Chester have to settle in this division. Halifax had last year where they finished 3rd. That extra season is going to be key to this. I'm tipping them up, another favourite.
What about the southern section? Butler, how do we price this one?
As you can tell from my accent, I'm much more of a northern Blue Square man rather than a southern Blue Square man. But this is the only one I actually have a view on. I really do. I think Eastleigh here at 5 to 1 are a great bet each way. I think they've got a lot of money, owned by a good guy down there. Real good moves. But a man who knows a lot more than me is Alan over there.
Yeah, well, this is incredible, because usually I would try and find an outsider, but I have actually had bets on all 3 favourites for this division. And bearing in mind that I set the odds for Blue Square, and obviously everyone copies us then after. So I've dictated to where I can actually get my bet on. I should maybe hide it some years. But no, I'm not that unscrupulous, and I've placed a bet on all 3 favourites, and I think it's Eastleigh, as Nigel says, they're a very good each way bet. They've spent lots of money, but there's been money spent in that Blue Square Bet South before, and it hasn't always worked out. Talking to the likes of Havant and Waterlooville, 19th last year. They were so well backed.
And just before we wrap up the show tonight, we are going to talk cricket, because there's been lots of stories, of course, in the newspapers today. Let's see how that's reflected in the prices for the 3rd test that starts a little bit later on this week at Lord's. Butler.
Yeah, I mean, it has a big negative for England, obviously. Nobody's really putting any money down. Negative from the press, negative by the British public, and negative by the British punters as well. 11 to 4 you can get now to win the 3rd test. Very big price. I've tipped the draw up in every single test match so far. Got it right once, should have got it right in the first. I think the draw again at 6 to 4, which means South Africa win the series, is a great bet. I still think we've got a bit of bad weather coming in towards the end of the week. I think that's another good bet here. South Africa 2 to 1. I know that will be backed. Punters are always saying that, but England massively on the drift. They were at 9 to 4, now out to 11 to 4, and I can see them even hitting around 7 to 2.
That is the 3rd test, and that wraps up the punter for this edition. Many thanks to the Bet Butler, Nigel Seeley, and to Alan Alger of Blue Square as well. Hopefully we've put you onto 1 or 2 bets when it comes to the football and the cricket, and indeed the Olympics in Rio in 4 years' time. That's all we've got time for, and we'll see you next time on The Punter.